The second call came from Marcy. That's important. Because the first call, the one at 4:11 a.m. from the automated alert system, I could explain. Instruments glitch. Sensors throw phantom readings. It happens. But Marcy doesn't call at 4 in the morning. Marcy doesn't call at all anymore. Marcy transferred to the Boise office 8 months ago, and last I heard, she was doing agricultural moisture forecasting. Quiet work. Safe work. So when her name lit up my phone 19 minutes after the system alert, and when I answered and heard nothing but the low, rolling sound of wind being recorded too close to a microphone, I should have known this was the start of something I wouldn't be able to walk back. I need to explain how this job works. My name is Joel Breyer. I'm a senior field analyst for the National Severe Storms Monitoring Cooperative, NSSMC, though nobody outside the organization has ever heard of us by that name, and that's by design. We're not the National Weather Service. We're not NOAA, though we share some satellite feeds. We're a parallel monitoring body, created through a quiet interagency memorandum in 1991, and our specific mandate is the classification and response protocol for storm events that fall outside standard meteorological modeling. That sounds bureaucratic, and it is. Most of the time. We have 12 regional offices. I work out of the one in Tulsa, alongside 5 other analysts, a systems technician named Dev, and our station supervisor, Caroline Voss. The Tulsa office covers a monitoring radius that stretches from the Texas Panhandle up through southern Nebraska, the core of what most people know as Tornado Alley. Our job is to watch, to flag, to classify. Most of what we flag is mundane. A supercell that forms faster than models predicted. A pressure drop that doesn't correlate with any frontal boundary. Rotation signatures that appear in radar data but have no corresponding visual confirmation. We log these, assign them a classification grade between C1 and C4, file the report with the National Coordination Desk in Virginia, and move on. In 4 years, I had never seen anything above a C3. I need to talk about the 5 designations. They're not rules, exactly. That word gets thrown around in the briefing materials, but it's more accurate to call them response thresholds, criteria that, once met, trigger specific and mandatory actions by whoever is on shift. They were written in 1994, revised once in 2003, and they are printed on a single laminated card that stays mounted next to every monitoring terminal in every NSSMC office. Not on a computer. Not in a file. Physically printed, physically present, because the 2003 revision added a clause specifying that during an active event, networked systems may become unreliable. I used to think that clause was paranoid. The 5 thresholds are as follows. Threshold 1, spontaneous formation. If radar indicates the development of a rotating mesocyclone with no precursor convective activity, no frontal boundary, no outflow interaction, no thermal gradient, within a window of less than 9 minutes, the event is flagged as a sigma-class anomaly and continuous monitoring begins. Threshold 2, acoustic displacement. If the infrasound array detects a sub-18 Hz tone pattern emanating from inside the storm cell itself, not from terrain interaction, not from structural vibration, an acoustic profile is logged and compared against the NSSMC reference library. If no match is found, the tone is recorded and an isolation protocol is initiated on the monitoring station's audio systems. I didn't understand why audio isolation mattered until last October. Threshold 3, radar return inversion. If the storm cell produces radar reflectivity that inverts, meaning the return signal suggests the cell is absorbing rather than reflecting the radar pulse. All direct observation is suspended. No visual confirmation through windows. No deployment of spotters. Monitoring continues exclusively through instruments. Threshold 4, Barometric Paradox. If the station's barometric readings show simultaneous contradictory values, pressure rising and falling at the same time across instruments less than 30 feet apart, the station enters lockdown. Exterior doors are sealed. Staff remain in the interior monitoring room. Contact with the Virginia desk becomes continuous. Threshold 5 has no name on the card. The card just says, if all 4 previous thresholds are met simultaneously during a single storm event, initiate full criterion red. Do not wait for Virginia confirmation. Do not attempt to collect additional data. Execute evacuation of non-essential personnel and transfer primary monitoring to satellite relay. In 4 years, nobody in Tulsa had ever gotten past Threshold 2. On the night of October 14th, we hit all 5 in under 40 minutes. The shift that night was me, Dev, and a newer analyst named Sonia Park. Caroline was off-site at a regional coordination meeting in Dallas. That left me as acting lead, which normally meant nothing. October in Oklahoma is active season, but nothing about the early evening suggested anything unusual. The models showed a weak trough moving through, maybe enough to generate some garden-variety thunderstorms after midnight. Dev had the infrasound array running its diagnostic cycle. Sonia was annotating radar composites from a C2 event that had occurred 2 weeks earlier near Amarillo. At 11:47 p.m., I noticed the first thing that didn't make sense. The surface observation station at coordinates 36.2 degrees north, 97.8 degrees west, a rural automated site roughly 60 miles northwest of Tulsa, reported a temperature drop of 14 degrees in 6 minutes. That's extreme but not impossible during a strong outflow event. What was impossible was that no storms existed anywhere within 200 miles of that station. The nearest convective activity was a disorganized cluster down near Wichita Falls, almost in Texas. The atmosphere above 36.2 north was clear. I checked the satellite imagery myself. Stars were visible. I flagged it and kept watching. At 11:53, the same station reported a pressure drop of 9 millibars in 4 minutes. At 11:54, the station went offline. I told Dev to pull up the nearest adjacent surface sites. 3 of them, forming a rough triangle around the dead station, all showed normal readings. No temperature anomaly. No pressure anomaly. The event, whatever it was localized to an area smaller than 15 miles across. Sonia asked me if we should call it in. I said not yet. We didn't have a radar signature. We didn't have anything except a dead surface station, and those go offline all the time, power issues, animal damage to the solar panels, cellular modem failures. At 12:02 a.m. on October 15th, the radar showed something. It appeared on a single sweep. Not a gradual buildup of returns, not the slow blooming of convection you see when storms develop. One sweep, the area was clean. Next sweep, 6 seconds later, there was a cell. Already rotating. Already 52 dBz at its core, which is the kind of reflectivity you see inside a mature supercell that's been building for an hour. 9 minutes had not passed. 6 seconds had passed. Threshold 1. I initiated continuous monitoring and sent the first report to Virginia. Dev armed the infrasound array and switched it from diagnostic to live capture. Sonia began logging. The cell sat there. It didn't move. Storms move, they're carried by mid-level winds, they propagate along outflow boundaries, they are part of a larger atmospheric flow. This cell was stationary. Locked in place over the coordinates where the surface station had died. The radar returns showed rotation, tightening, classic mesocyclone structure, but the cell itself didn't translate. Not 1 mile in any direction. At 12:09, Dev said, "Joel, I'm getting a tone." He put it on the monitoring speakers before I could tell him not to. I don't blame him for that. We'd never had an active Threshold 2 event, and the protocols don't specify speaker restrictions until the tone is confirmed as unmatchable. What came through the speakers was low. Not a rumble, not a hum. It was more like the sound a large space makes when it's empty, the kind of auditory texture you feel in your chest more than hear with your ears. Except it was patterned. It rose and fell in intervals that were too regular to be environmental. Dev ran the match against the reference library. No match. Threshold 2. I told Dev to cut the speakers and isolate the audio system. He did. The tone continued registering on the infrasound readout, a waveform scrolling across his screen in a shape that looked, and I know how this sounds, like breathing. Long inhale. Pause. Long exhale. Repeating. Sonia was watching the radar. She said, "The reflectivity is climbing." I looked. She was right. The cell's core had gone from 52 to 61 dBz in 7 minutes. That's the difference between heavy rain and destructive hail. But the cell was only 15 miles across and still wasn't moving. At 12:14, Sonia said something else. "Joel. The returns are going negative." I thought she'd misread the display. Radar reflectivity doesn't go negative. The scale starts at 0. Below 0 means the radar pulse went out and less energy came back than ambient noise levels would produce. It means the air itself is absorbing the signal. It means something in the atmosphere is taking the radar energy and not giving it back. I walked to her terminal and looked. The cell's core wasn't red or purple anymore on the display. It was black. The software was painting it black because it had no color code for what it was seeing. The reflectivity at the center of the cell read -17 dBz. I have a degree in atmospheric science. I've read every published paper on anomalous radar propagation, ducting, superrefraction, biological returns, chaff contamination. -17 dBz from the core of a rotating mesocyclone is not in any of those papers. It's not in anything. Threshold 3. I closed the blinds on the northwest-facing window. Dev looked at me like I was being dramatic. I pointed at the laminated card on the wall. He closed the rest of the blinds without saying another word. I called Virginia. The coordination desk picked up on the second ring. They'd already seen my first report and were monitoring our data feed remotely. The officer on duty was a man named Hargrove. I'd spoken to him maybe 3 times in 4 years, always about routine administrative things. This time, his voice had a quality I hadn't heard before. Not fear, exactly. Precision. Like he was choosing every word from a very short list of pre-approved options. He told me to confirm our threshold status. I confirmed thresholds 1 through 3. He told me to continue monitoring and to report immediately if threshold 4 was reached. Then he said something that wasn't in any protocol I'd been trained on. He said, "If you have personal vehicles in the lot, make sure they're fueled and facing the exit." I asked him what that meant. He said, "It means I've seen the reference files from 94 and I want your team mobile if this continues." I didn't ask what happened in 94. I should have. But at that moment, 3 things happened in quick succession that took all of my attention. 12:19 a.m. The barometer on the east wall of the monitoring room read 1008.2 millibars. Normal. Stable. 12:19 a.m. The barometer on the west wall, 22 feet away, read 989.7 millibars. That's an 18 millibar discrepancy inside a single room. Dev looked at both instruments. He tapped the west unit. He tapped the east unit. He checked the calibration stamps. Both had been calibrated 11 days ago. Both were functioning correctly. Both were giving readings that could not simultaneously be true in the same enclosed space. Threshold 4. I initiated lockdown. Dev sealed the exterior doors using the magnetic bolts, a system I'd tested in drills but never activated for real. Sonia patched our monitoring feed to the satellite relay. I called Hargrove back. When I told him we'd reached threshold 4, there was a pause on the line that lasted long enough for me to hear him set something down on his desk. Then he said, "How fast?" 40 minutes. Maybe less. Another pause. That's faster than 94. Then, Joel. Listen to me carefully. The 5th threshold is not theoretical. Do you understand? It is not a placeholder. If that card activates fully, you evacuate first. You do not collect data. You do not save equipment. You take your people and you drive south until the barometric readings equalize. Are we clear? What happens at threshold 5? The storm becomes aware of the monitoring. I didn't know how to respond to that. Hargrove is not a dramatic man. He's a career civil servant who's been with the coordination desk since 2006. He uses phrases like, per the standard guidance, and, in accordance with the established framework. He does not say storms become aware. I told him we were locked down. I told him I'd report again in 15 minutes. I hung up and looked at Dev and Sonia. Dev was staring at his infrasound display. The breathing changed, he said. I walked over. The waveform pattern, the long, regular inhale-exhale that had been cycling since 1209, was still present. But it had shifted. The intervals were shorter. The amplitude was higher. And there was a new element in the waveform. A secondary oscillation, nested inside the primary one, at a higher frequency. It looked like the pattern was becoming more complex. Like it was developing structure. Like it was trying to form something. Don't play it, I said. Dev nodded. He didn't play it. But he pointed at a number on his screen. The infrasound frequency had been hovering around 7 Hz for most of the event. It was now at 14 Hz. Still below human hearing, technically. But 14 Hz is close enough to the threshold that some people can perceive it as a pressure, a vibration, a wrongness in the air that has no visible source. Sonia said she felt nauseous. I told her to sit down and drink water. I told myself the nausea was anxiety. 12:31 a.m. The cell on radar had expanded. It was now 25 miles across, still stationary, still showing the black void at its center. But the expansion wasn't uniform. It was reaching outward in tendrils, narrow fingers of radar return extending from the main circulation like spokes from a hub. 3 of them pointed south. toward us. I started calculating distances. The cell's center was 60 miles northwest. The tendrils were extending at a rate I could estimate from successive radar sweeps. At their current rate of growth, the nearest tendril would reach the Tulsa metro area in approximately 90 minutes. I called Hargrove. He didn't pick up. I called again. No answer. I called the Virginia desk's main line. Automated system. I selected the option for the coordination officer. Ringing. No answer. I tried Hargrove's direct line a third time. This time, it connected, but the voice on the other end wasn't Hargrove. It was a woman I didn't recognize. She identified herself as Director Calloway. I'd heard the name. She was the NSSMC's National Operations Director, the person Hargrove reported to. I had never spoken with her. She asked me for our threshold status. All four met. We're in lockdown. Are the tendrils on your radar pointing toward your station? I hadn't told her about the tendrils. I hadn't told anyone about the tendrils, we'd only identified them in the last 2 minutes. Yes, I said. Mr. Breyer, I need you to do something that's going to feel wrong. I need you to turn off your radar. What? Your radar transmitter is a signal source. The cell is using signal sources to orient. Your surface station at 36.2 north went offline because the cell consumed its transmissions to locate it. If you continue transmitting radar pulses into that cell, you are telling it exactly where you are. I looked at the radar screen. The tendrils. 3 of them. Pointing south. Pointing at the 3 nearest active radar sites. Jesus. Turn off the radar, Mr. Breyer. Now. And turn off your infrasound array. Turn off anything that's transmitting any signal of any kind. Then go dark. Fully dark. I'll coordinate satellite-only monitoring from here. I gave the order. Dev killed the infrasound array. I shut down the radar transmitter. Sonia disconnected the satellite uplink on my signal. In 15 seconds, our station went from a fully operational monitoring hub to a silent, sealed box. The lights stayed on, internal power, no transmission. But every screen that had been showing live data was now blank or frozen on its last frame. The monitoring room, which for the past 40 minutes had been alive with scrolling data and the faint tension of active tracking, was suddenly just a room. Fluorescent lights. Stale coffee. 3 people staring at each other. I picked up the landline, a physical copper line, not digital, not transmitting anything unless actively in use, and called Calloway back. We're dark. Good. Stay dark. Stay inside. I'm watching the cell via satellite. I'll tell you when it's safe. How long? Last time, it took 4 hours to dissipate after the signal sources were removed. Last time. 1994, September 3rd. The Dodge City event. The station there didn't go dark fast enough. 2 people in the monitoring room developed acute sensory neural hearing loss. One of them, a field analyst, like you, walked outside during the event. Into the storm. What happened to him? Calloway was quiet for a moment. Then, he was recovered 6 miles from the station. He was alive. He has not spoken since. I sat down. Director Calloway. What is this? What is in that storm? We don't know. And I want to be honest with you, we don't know in a way that is different from the usual we don't know. We have data. We have recordings. We have 30 years of Sigma-class event files. We have spectral analyses and infrasound libraries and barometric paradox measurements from 7 confirmed events across 4 decades. We have all of this data and none of it tells us what is generating these cells. What we do know is behavioral. We know it responds to electromagnetic signals. We know it grows toward transmission sources. We know the infrasound patterns increase in complexity over the duration of the event, and we know that the complexity increase correlates with proximity to human observers. We know it seems to want to be close to us. And we know that when it gets close enough, it does something to people that we cannot reverse. She paused. The rules on your wall are not a classification system, Mr. Breyer. They are a recognition sequence. Each threshold is a stage in the cell's development. Spontaneous formation is birth. The acoustic signature is orientation. The radar inversion is feeding. The barometric paradox is maturation. And the 5th threshold, the one with no name, is when it starts looking for the people who've been watching it. 1:04 a.m. The 3 of us sat in the monitoring room in the dark. Not true dark, the fluorescents were still on, but information dark. No feeds. No data. No way to know what was happening 60 miles to our northwest except through a copper telephone line connected to a woman in Virginia watching a satellite image. Sonia asked me if she could open a blind. She said she wanted to see if the sky had changed. I said no. I said it louder than I meant to. Threshold 3 exists for a reason. No visual confirmation during a radar-inverted event. I'd closed those blinds 90 minutes ago, and every cell in my body was telling me not to open them. Not because of what I might see. Because of what might see me. That thought didn't come from the training materials. It came from somewhere inside me that I don't want to examine too closely. 1:22 a.m. The telephone rang. Callaway, the cell is contracting. Contracting. That's good. The tendrils are retracting. The cell's diameter has decreased from 25 miles to 18. The core reflectivity is still inverted, but the outer bands are weakening. It's pulling inward. So it's dying. No. It's consolidating. This is consistent with the 94 file. After signal sources are removed, the cell stops expanding and begins to compress. It becomes denser. More concentrated. And then, in 94, this took approximately 2 hours, it descends. Descends. The cell drops from the upper atmosphere to the surface. It becomes a ground-level event. Dense fog, effectively, but with all the anomalous characteristics intact. Inverted radar returns. Infrasound. Barometric paradox. All of it, at ground level. And then it moves. Slowly. Usually south. Usually toward the last known signal source. I looked at the blank radar screen. We'd been the last signal source. How fast does it move on the ground? Walking speed. My chair creaked as I leaned back. Walking speed. 60 miles at walking speed. That was somewhere between 12 and 20 hours. But Callaway had said the 94 event dissipated in 4 hours after going dark. If the same timeline held, the cell would collapse before it reached us. If the same timeline held. Is there any reason to think this one is different from 94? I asked. Calloway didn't answer immediately. The 94 cell took 3 hours to reach full threshold. Yours took 40 minutes. I understood the implication. If it formed faster, it might sustain longer. It might move faster. The 94 playbook might not apply. Should we evacuate? Not yet. Evacuation means opening doors. Opening doors means exposing yourselves to whatever atmospheric conditions exist outside your station. If the cell has already begun descending, and if any part of it has reached your area, opening those doors is the worst thing you could do. Stay sealed. Stay dark. I will tell you when the satellite shows clear conditions around your position. 1:58 a.m. Dev was sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, eyes closed. Sonia was at her desk, writing in a notebook, not a log, just writing, like she needed the physical act of putting pen to paper to feel like she was still in control of something. I was watching the barometers. The east wall unit had been reading 1008.2 at lockdown. It now read 1007.9. Normal drift. The west wall unit had been at 989.7. It now read 991.3. Still discrepant, but the gap was narrowing. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. Because the gap was narrowing from the wrong side. The east unit was dropping. The west unit was rising. They were converging toward a midpoint, somewhere around 999 millibars, which would represent a pressure level that didn't match any external condition that should exist on a calm October night in Tulsa. They were equalizing. Inside the room. As if the room were slowly becoming its own atmosphere, disconnected from the outside. 2:13 a.m. Both barometers read 999.4 millibars. Exactly the same. In a room where, 2 hours ago, they'd been 18 millibars apart. I picked up the phone and called Calloway. She answered on the first ring this time. Her voice was different. Faster. Mr. Breyer. I need you to answer a question honestly. Can anyone in your team hear anything right now? Anything at all from outside the building? I listened. I gestured for Dev and Sonia to listen. Nothing. Tulsa is a city. There's always something, traffic, distant trains, the HVAC systems of neighboring buildings. Our station is in a commercial district, not isolated, not remote. There should have been sound. No, I said. Nothing. The cell is no longer visible on satellite. It dissipated. No. The satellite is still detecting the thermal anomaly. The cell still exists. But it's no longer at altitude. It descended. Faster than 94. And Mr. Breyer, the thermal signatures center is no longer 60 miles from your position. I waited. It's approximately 4 miles north of your station and it is moving south at a rate we estimate between 6 and 8 miles per hour. Not walking speed. Running speed. You said it moves at walking speed. I said it moved at walking speed in 1994. I did the math without wanting to. For miles at 6 to 8 miles per hour. 30 to 40 minutes. Evacuate, Calloway said. Now. South. Take the landline number with you. Call me from a gas station, a hotel, anywhere with a wired phone. Do not use cellular. Do not turn on your vehicle's radio. Do not stop driving until you have at least 70 miles between you and the station. I hung up. I looked at Dev and Sonia. I told them what Calloway had said. Dev was on his feet immediately. Sonia was slower. She asked about the equipment, the hard drives, the infrasound recordings. Leave everything. The data from tonight. Sonia. Leave it. She left it. I unsealed the exterior doors. The magnetic bolts released with a sound like a sigh. The hallway beyond the monitoring room was dark, the motion sensor lights had gone to sleep, and when they flickered on as we moved through, each one illuminated a stretch of ordinary hallway that felt, for reasons I can't articulate, like it was being shown to me for the last time. We reached the back entrance. The door to the parking lot. I put my hand on the push bar. And I stopped. Because I could hear something. Not from inside the building. From outside the door. A sound so low it was almost below perception. Not a hum. Not wind. It was the sound from Dev's infrasound array, the breathing pattern, except I was hearing it now without instruments, without speakers, without any amplification. I was hearing it through a steel fire door and a concrete wall. The infrasound had been at 14 Hz when we went dark. For me to hear it now, unaided, through a sealed door, it had to be above 20 Hz. It had to have climbed into the audible range. It had to have become sound, real, atmospheric, present sound, the kind that exists in the air around you. It was outside. Dev heard it too. I could tell because he stopped moving and his hand went to the side of his head, the way people do when they're not sure if they're hearing something or imagining it. Sonia looked at us. What? She couldn't hear it. Some people can't. The threshold of low-frequency perception varies. Sonia's was apparently a few hertz higher than mine and Dev's. I pulled out my phone. Off. I turned it on, just the phone, no data, no calls, I just needed the clock. 2:47 a.m. Calloway had said 30 to 40 minutes from 2:13. That meant the thermal center of the cell would reach our position between 2:43 and 2:53. It was 2:47 and I could hear it breathing outside the door. We can't go out there, I said. She said to evacuate, Dev said. She said to evacuate at 2:13. When it was 4 miles away. It's here now. Dev, it's right outside. He stared at the door. Back to the monitoring room, I said. Now. We went back. I resealed the doors. We sat in the fluorescent light of the monitoring room and we listened to a sound that grew louder over the next 2 hours, a rhythmic, patterned, almost linguistic sound that came from everywhere and nowhere, that vibrated the coffee in our mugs and made the laminated threshold card tremble against the wall. The barometers both read 999.4. They did not move. At 3:15 a.m., the sound changed. The breathing pattern broke apart into something faster, more staccato, like syllables. Like something was trying to form words from frequencies that human vocal cords never evolved to produce. Dev put his hands over his ears. I could see his eyes watering. Sonia, who still couldn't hear the primary tone, said the air pressure in the room felt wrong, like being at altitude, like her ears needed to pop. At 3:41 a.m., the fluorescent lights began to flicker. Not randomly. In time with the sound. On the inhale, they brightened. On the exhale, they dimmed. Our building's electrical system was responding to the atmospheric conditions outside. The cell was close enough to modulate our power grid through electromagnetic interference. At 4:02 a.m., the lights went out. Complete darkness. Not even the emergency exit signs. The backup generator didn't kick in, and I realized with a sick certainty that I'd never heard the generator test cycle that should have run at midnight. It had failed silently, hours before any of this started, as if something had prepared the building to be dark at the moment it needed the building to be dark. We sat in absolute blackness. The sound was the only thing. It was inside the walls now. I could feel it in my teeth. At 4:11 a.m., the automated alert system on my phone, which I'd turned on only for the clock, triggered. A burst of data. A transmission. The phone had been off network, but the alert system operates on a separate emergency broadcast channel. It sent a signal. A signal. I grabbed the phone and powered it off so fast I nearly dropped it. But the damage was done. One pulse. One electromagnetic burst from inside the building. The sound outside stopped. Complete silence. Then, very slowly, the barometer on the west wall began to drop. 999.4. 998.1. 996.3. The air in the room was changing. Getting thinner. Getting colder. My breath came out in a cloud that I couldn't see but could feel against my own lips. And then, and I will remember this for the rest of my life, I heard a sound from the ventilation duct above us. Not the breathing. Not the infrasound. A different sound. Small. Exploratory. Tapping. Like fingers. Testing the metal. Finding the edges of the vent cover. Mapping the geometry of a way in. I did something then that I'm not proud of, and I'm not ashamed of, because pride and shame require a kind of deliberation that I did not have in that moment. I acted on instinct refined by every hour I'd spent studying things that shouldn't exist. I grabbed Sonia's notebook and a pen. I tore out a blank page. In the dark, writing by feel, I wrote 5 words, "There is nothing here listening." I don't know why I wrote it. I don't know what theory of this phenomenon made me think that words on a page would matter to something that navigated by electromagnetic signals and infrasound patterns. But Callaway had said it responds to signal sources. It orients toward transmissions. It seeks out the signature of observation. And I thought, irrationally, desperately, that if it could detect the electromagnetic pulse of a phone, maybe it could detect something even subtler. Maybe it was sensitive enough to locate the neurological activity of a conscious observer. Maybe the reason it moved toward monitoring stations was not the radar or the instruments but the people operating them. The people paying attention. And maybe, if I could make myself stop paying attention, stop observing, stop being a signal source in the most fundamental cognitive sense of the term. I put my hands over Dev's eyes. I hissed at Sonia to close hers. I closed mine. "Stop listening," I whispered. "Stop thinking about it. Think about something else. Anything else. Your breakfast this morning. A song. Math. Anything but this." Dev's breathing was ragged but he complied. Sonia, who'd been the calmest of us all night, maybe because she couldn't hear the tone, maybe because she was just built different, started whispering multiplication tables under her breath. Quiet. Mechanical. The recitation of a mind deliberately pointed away from the thing that wanted to be perceived. I thought about my daughter. She's 7. Her name is Lena. She has a gap where her front tooth used to be and she's embarrassed about it in photos but not in real life. I thought about the way she holds a crayon, too tight, always pressing too hard, breaking the tips. I thought about the sound of her feet on hardwood floors in the morning when she's trying to be sneaky and get to the cereal before I wake up. I did not think about the duct. I did not think about the tapping. I did not think about what was outside or above or all around us, pressing against the building like a hand testing the shell of an egg. 4:38 a.m. The tapping stopped. 4:40 a.m. The barometers began to climb. I wasn't looking at them, but I heard the faint mechanical tick of the analog needles moving. Rising. 4:57 a.m. The lights came back. Fluorescent tubes cycling on with that familiar electrical hum, warm and ordinary and unbearably beautiful. 5:12 a.m. I opened my eyes. Dev opened his. Sonia had fallen asleep. Genuinely asleep, her head on the desk, the notebook still under her hand. I think that unconsciousness might have been the purest form of what I'd been trying to do, a complete withdrawal of observation. A mind that wasn't just looking away but had stopped looking entirely. I picked up the landline and called Callaway. It rang 11 times before she answered. She sounded exhausted. "It's gone from satellite," she said. Thermal signature dissipated at 4:44 a.m. "How are your people?" "We're here." "Did you open any doors during the ground level phase?" "No." "Did anyone look outside?" "No." "Good. Good." She exhaled. "Mr. Breyer, I'm going to send a recovery team to your station within the next 12 hours. They'll debrief you and your team individually. I need to tell you now, before the debrief, before any of the formal process, that what you experienced tonight will not appear in any public record. The NWS will issue a statement about unusual low-pressure activity in northern Oklahoma. That will be the extent of the public acknowledgement. I understand. I don't think you do. Not yet. But you will after the debrief." She paused, then. "One more thing. The analyst from 94. The one who walked outside. His name was Thomas Voss. Voss. Caroline Voss. Our station supervisor. The one who was conveniently in Dallas that night. Was he? Her father. Yes. He's in a long-term care facility in Wichita. He's been there for 30 years. He doesn't speak. He doesn't write. But the staff say he does one thing, every night, between midnight and 5 a.m. What? He listens. The debrief happened 2 days later. I signed documents I wasn't given copies of. I answered questions from people who didn't give me their names. Dev did the same. Sonia did the same. Caroline came back from Dallas the following Monday. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't ask about the logs or the data or the missing night of monitoring records. She walked in, sat at her desk, and looked at the laminated card on the wall for a long time. Then she looked at me. And I saw something in her expression that I recognized, because I'd felt it myself in the dark at 4:38 a.m. when the tapping stopped. Not relief. Not fear. Recognition. She knew exactly what had happened. She'd always known. The meeting in Dallas, the convenient absence on the exact night of a Sigma-class event, wasn't coincidence. She'd seen it coming. She'd read whatever patterns exist in the data that the rest of us don't have clearance to see, and she'd made sure she was somewhere else. She'd also made sure I was the one on shift. The most experienced analyst. the one most likely to follow the thresholds correctly. I've thought about that a lot. I've thought about Hargrove's silence when I asked how fast, about Calloway's too fast answers, about the 94 file that everyone above my clearance level has apparently memorized. I've thought about the 7 confirmed events across 4 decades and the implication that there will be an 8th. A 9th. That this thing, whatever it is, isn't a one-time anomaly but a recurring phenomenon, a weather pattern in the loosest possible sense of the term, something that forms and hunts and dissipates and forms again. I've thought about Thomas Voss, sitting in a facility in Wichita, listening to nothing every night for 30 years. And I've thought about what I heard in the duct above me at 4:02 a.m. The tapping. The careful, methodical exploration of the vent cover. The geometry of a way in. Here's the thing that I keep coming back to. The thing that the debrief didn't address and that I didn't ask about because I was afraid of the answer. The cell responded to our radar. It grew toward our infrasound array. It found us when my phone sent a single emergency alert pulse. It tracks signals. It orients toward observation. But in the duct, in the complete dark, with every electronic system dead, with no signals being transmitted from inside that room, it was still there. Still tapping. Still searching. If it only followed electromagnetic signals, it should have lost us the moment we went dark. It didn't. Which means either there's a signal source inside us that we can't turn off, something in the bioelectric activity of a conscious, attentive, frightened human brain that registers as a beacon to this thing. Or it had already found us, long before October, and wasn't tracking our instruments at all. It was tracking what the instruments were pointed at. It's been 6 months. The Tulsa sky has been clear. The models are quiet. The surface stations are reporting normal. Everything is ordinary. But I check the barometer in the monitoring room twice every shift now. Both of them. East wall and west wall. And last Tuesday, for 6 seconds, they disagreed by half a millibar. Dev didn't notice. I didn't tell him. I don't know what that makes me.